Good evening, everybody, and welcome here to the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway, as it plays host to the fourth race of the third season of the UpperEdge Racing Baadteshop Superspeedway Series. Here today, we are at the legacy version of Daytona. I'm Seth Cole, being joined alongside of Lucas Cram for the NSRA 140. Lucas, another trip to Daytona. We were at Daytona last week, but this one's entirely different. And as we said last week, maybe the toughest track the drivers are going to have to deal with on the entire schedule.
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously, plate racing is always perceived as, being super easy. You can kind of stay in a tight file formation and kind of just hold the gas and turn left, if you will. Obviously, a lot more dynamics coming into play with the draft, but this is the only real super we're going to see these guys have to actually race the racetrack to an extent with those major bumps we talk about every single week. We've raced at this, this version of Daytona. Those bumps down there just really throw a major factor in the handling and the ability to make moves around this 2.5-mile Superspeedway. So definitely going to be intriguing to see, how these guys manage that, especially that big bump off of turn number 4, and how much these guys are going to try to force the issue to go 3 wide.
Fourth week of the season, and already we've had a bit of a trade-off 2 versus 2 as far as poles for Bronson Stafford and Joey Chapman. Chapman having the poles in the season opener and last week, and Bronson Stafford having the poles in the second race of the season at Talladega, and of course here today at Daytona. He'll be starting alongside of Justin Duran, the 29 new colors on that Exalta Chevrolet. Robert Kenny, David Duran going to make up row 2 with Michael Norman completing the top 5. As we take a look at the starting lineup, I think that a guy that we have to highlight coming into this race, basically just on what's happened in the last 3 weeks, would have to be the 99 of Ryan Potter. Season opener iRacing Superspeedway, he wasn't even in the race. We didn't have a clue who he was. He shows up in race number 2, brings it home in the closest photo finish of the entire series in second place, and then last week goes to victory lane and comes in as the points leader. I mean, this guy has certainly caught fire. He's got consistency. Does he become our first repeat winner on the season here today?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question, but obviously with that success comes the opposite effect of that, and that's, the level of respect I guess you'll receive from the drivers around you. Obviously, they're going to be willing to help, make runs with you because they know that you can be trusted to actually be competitive and fast and help them, pull that line forward. But on the opposite end of that, when it comes down to these last 10 laps, these guys are going to be, a little bit more cautious as far as much as they help them, just knowing exactly what it's capable of and knowing that they can put themselves in a position where they don't have a chance at the victory with them being up there. So definitely going to be intriguing to see how these guys kind of decide to race, and maybe it's still early enough, and maybe they continue to kind of just push him, and maybe we'll see him go back to victory lane here today. But at the opposite end of that, if the continued success always leads to trouble trying to find a help out there. So intriguing to see how that plays out.
You saw there 13 drivers took time, 15 drivers to take the green. Ryan Potter was the only driver who did not take time that is up here with the grid, rolling off 14th. Looks like Sean Billman missed the grid, and he will be starting from pit road, but he should be on the lead lap when we go green here. Bronson Stafford waiting for that iRacing pace car to make the left-hand turn, and it's time to go racing at the legacy version of Daytona International Speedway. Green flag flies. Let's get this 56-lap event underway.
Bronson Stafford immediately already into turn number 1, getting that push from the number 10 machine right there behind him. New number, I believe, Robert Kenny, this season, number 10 machine. He's continuing to try to make that work after some unfortunate luck the first handful of weeks here. Looking to obviously try to turn that around in here today, as he's already immediately clear off of turn number 2, down the back straightaway, pushing his teammate there, Bronson, out to the race lead.
Saw him fishtailing there, and that's a little apropos. Could you talk about the hard luck he's had this season? I don't know a whole lot about military, but just the yellow on the front there, that car, the way that it's designed reminds me a lot of a torpedo. So I'm not certain if that's exactly what you want to be known as out here at a Superspeedway.
Or maybe it's kind of his payback revenge tour of getting back out on the rest of these guys, kind of knocking them down the running order. But on the outside lane, immediately already coming into play here, and that's the thing that this track, with those bumps down the inside lane, the middle is way more smooth, and obviously it's kind of relative because there's still a lot of bumps up there. But if you can run that middle lane to perfection, you kind of pinch those guys down the bottom, you could really get a good run coming up out of these corners, especially off turn before, where we see that 29 machine kind of carry that outside lane. So it can definitely be a huge help for that outside lane to kind of just carry the momentum, which you're already seeing here coming to play just lap 2.
You saw those two cars in the inside line, Stafford and Kenny, moving up and down with those bumps in the corners, and that's obviously going to play a big factor into the outcome of this race. Reminds me a lot of like the turns that the drivers have to deal with at iRacing Superspeedway, where it's very difficult to line up the bumpers. It's easy enough on the straightaways, but just those bumps unsettling the race cars, you can't keep as tight a draft in the corners as you normally would at even the more current version here of Daytona. Oh, and we're going to maybe have a wreck Kenny into the wall with Matthew Rodriguez. They all keep it pointed the right direction, so no caution will fly, but that is a huge deficit to start out with for the 10 and the 57.
It's all about that 3 wide. Robert Kenny saw that 97 machine. Mike Taylor coming through up the middle of them back straightaway, and he tried to make that same kind of move in the middle of the trial oval, and obviously, unfortunately, had much different outcomes.
Tellier getting a big push now from Bronson Stafford. He will go to the front. We've only run the legacy version of Daytona twice in the last 3 seasons here of the Baadteshop Superspeedway series. Once in season 1, once in season 2. Only one of the former winners are in the field here today, and he's out in front.
Yeah, and that contact between those two drivers that we mentioned, that really has separated this field. Michael Norman, back there in the 6th position, I believe, is trying to keep Sebastian Miller, who actually started the race from the tail end of the field, trying to keep him back up there. It looks like they'll hang on to that lead draft, but that damage, Robert Kenny and that 10 machine is falling all the way back to the 8th position, and now racing side by side with John Carazaro. It's just really tough for that group to make that lost time with that damaged 10 machine out front. So if they can get back out in front and get reorganized, they may have a shot at kind of running back down these leaders, but this spread out field definitely might help come into play for Green Flag Racing here.
Yeah, did you see the run that Michael Norman was able to get there? Caught back up to this top 5, jumps up to the outside line. So now it's Tellier, Stafford, as well as Bill Edwards and Michael Norman on the top. The Durants on the bottom. Sebastian Miller, that bright orange Monster Energy 63 Toyota, trying to figure out which lane he wants to help. He moves high, moves low, little indecisive right at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation right up front up here as Bronson Stafford was trying to look to get to around the outside of Mike Taylor. Finally does as Mike Taylor jumps down in front of the 29 machine of Justin Durant. Now side by side for the race lead, kind of even on both lanes. 3 cars on the top, 3 cars on the bottom. And now the outside lane, you just see that surge to get out, even out of turn 2 with Bill Edwards on the back bumper of that 6-1 machine. They just get a huge run going down that long back straightaway. And off turn number 4, you'll see it over here once again. These cars on the inside lane, especially when they hit that bump that is over that tunnel right there in turn number 4, it really just kind of throws the car up the racetrack. And when these guys get really tight on each other later on in this race, it's going to be really tough for those guys not only to hold it down the inside and avoid washing it up the racetrack into the cars on their outside, but even nose to tail, it's very easy to catch the guy in front of you quicker than you're anticipating and get in the left rear quarter panel. So I'm definitely intrigued to see how these guys kind of handle that for the rest of this event.
Riding on board with Michael Norman right now in the, well, he was 2nd, now back to 4th as Stafford and Miller get a run to his outside. But just watching the hand motion of the steering wheel, one would think they're at Atlanta rather than Daytona. I mean, it is left, right, even on the straightaways.
Yeah, old Atlanta, of course that is, after the configuration there. But yeah, no, that's what I mentioned. This is the only racetrack that these guys will experience where you actually have to race the racetrack, and it sounds so foreign, to somebody thinking about Daytona, but this is how it used to be, obviously, before the repave in 2011 at Daytona International Speedway, and it really comes into play. Those bumps down the inside lane, the bumps on the top lane, and then just the wore-out surface overall, it really has way less grip anywhere near the levels of new Daytona, and so it makes things really, really treacherous to obviously race around each other in close quarters.
Now, it's interesting, if we follow up the drivers that got damaged from the stack-up we saw coming out of the trial, well, Robert Kenny, even with that right front damage, still up here in this lead pack. Right now, unofficially in the 8th position. Matthew Rodriguez not faring nearly as well, but maybe a little bit of teamsmateship going on right now. I don't believe he was involved in the wreck, but Joey Chapman has dropped back to be able to give Matthew Rodriguez at least some drafting help, have him somewhat up to speed instead of running by himself. If Matthew Rodriguez is able to stay on the lead lap, catch a quick caution, then he wouldn't have to rely on the lucky dog. So that's what, right now, the 57 and the 60 are hoping for with the strategy they're playing currently.
And on the other end of that, we were talking about Robert Kenny being that 10 machine pretty tore up and trying to stay with that second group. If this doesn't prove how well built these old Xfinity cars are, Robert Kenny's already back up here in the top 5, battling these guys for the race lead. So he was able to pull that whole entire second group up with John Carazaro and everybody else in that group and kind of catch back up with this race leaders and just stay in this lead pack. So definitely a huge recovery from all those guys, and that kind of plays back into the factor of if we stay green, at least now they know they have a shot to kind of stay up here and battle for the race lead.
Very impressive, the fact that car looks like it should not be aerodynamically sound, and right now up here with a chance to get back into the top 5 is the Durans on the bottom, Justin in the 29, David in the 24, the former champion. They're going to try and move to the lead as Justin got awfully loose there off of turn 4, almost slid up into the driver's side door of Bronson Stafford.
Dylan Body and other guys at the back there, actually, I think they may have thought that they were wrecking. They kind of ducked down to the apron right there, coming off turn number 4, just trying to avoid any major checkups. And obviously, luckily for them, all the leaders in front of them managed to keep it in the right direction. But yeah, these guys are getting really, really edgy. You already see Mike Telly. He's trying the middle lane once. He's looking to try to double dip right there. Stuck underneath the, I believe that is the 63 machine of Sebastian Miller, trying to make that middle lane work. And the sketchiest part about that, like I mentioned, over and over and over again, it's just those bumps. That third lane is almost just about as bad as that bottom lane. So if somebody gets caught up in that third lane, the ability, the easiestness, I should say, of just able to catch those bumps and pushes you straight up in the middle of that safety barrier, and it's so tough to turn back down off of that without getting loose. So if these guys keep trying to force that issue 3 wide with the son of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it definitely could come into a major play here.
2 rows, 5, or double wide, I should say, 5 rows deep all the way back through the top 10 as Stafford continues to toe the outside line. Justin Durand on the inside line. You mentioned the word apron. Of course, here in this series, there is no out of bounds. The double line, or in this case, the single yellow line is not considered out of bounds. But I remember last week when we were talking with one of the podium finishers, Michael Norman, and we said, why didn't we see more drivers go down there to the apron? He said there really was no benefit to going down there. It didn't aid you really, and in most senses, it actually would hurt you and lose you positions on the racetrack. I get a feeling that that's more exemplified even more so today, because I was watching these guys in practice. I believe it was Ryan Potter. He attempted the apron through the tri-oval, and that thing just stepped out on him. There was no grip down in that inside line.
Most definitely, and someone else mentioned, you mentioned that single yellow line, and obviously around the apron here. With the repay, that seems like they definitely, obviously, it smooths the bumps out. So I'm sure the pavement of the pavement of the yellow line, I should say, matching the pavement of the racetrack, it makes it a little more treacherous. But that yellow line is very much not smooth all the way around this racetrack. It kind of flows with the bumps, and it maybe just maybe the painters kind of had a bit of an issue down there. Trying to straddle those bumps, and it just kind of moves around all over the place. And so it's very easy, even into the center of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, but especially in the middle of that tri-oval, it's very easy to kind of just, find yourself tracking down lower than you thought, trying to follow that yellow line, and you end up catching that apron. Obviously, travel here at Daytona, that makes you extremely just unhappy. The car just kind of becomes super unsettled, and it's super easy to kind of become free. And so you're seeing Justin Durand down here. It's very easy. Watch that yellow line with the center of this travel. It's kind of just up and down, up and down, up and down, and it's super easy, like he's doing right there, to kind of get your left sides down that apron without even trying.
We saw with the onboard earlier of how these drivers are literally fighting the race cars. We saw just there Sebastian Miller lose some momentum off of 4, get put in the middle 3 wide. I mean, that's got to be an even more helpless feeling, because not only are you fighting the race car, but you got air to your left, air to your right, that's moving the car around as well.
Most definitely, and you can't usually just back out, because you usually have cars stuck up right there behind you, and if you back out, you're getting turned around. So makes it very, very, very treacherous, and you're kind of just hoping you can make it through on the other side and you close your eyes. But those guys in the inside lane are definitely trying to make that work. And again, that's kind of the only thing with this outside lane here at this old configuration of Daytona. It just keeps that momentum up, and it's kind of like when they train the wall in real life almost on a super speedway, where you just kind of, it's tough to get an inside lane formed up. So if you can get the help, obviously you can get that lane working. But the high side is it's the only track with the high side on iRace, at least, is kind of the preferred groove.
A couple of days ago, I should say, was St. Patrick's Day. How about that emerald green, number 99, points leader Ryan Potter leading the inside. We're about to have a battle for the race lead between the top 2 in the point standings. Potter up 8 points on Stafford coming into tonight's race.
And Bronson Stafford just continuing to lead that outside lane and try to pick up as many laps as he can towards that championship bonus points, like you mentioned. And he qualified in the pole, which obviously gave him, I believe, 5 bonus points, if I'm not mistaken, 10 for getting the most positions. So these guys all in the back, Mike Telly, Ryan Potter, both those guys who started 13th and 14th, basically at the rear of the field. They're up here 2nd and 3rd, so they're both currently tied, obviously, for that the most positions gained, 10 bonus points. But and so they continue to just come down to it. We were talking about it last week. 12 races this season, about double the length of the schedule last season, if I'm not mistaken. Those bonus points are really going to come into play over the course of 12 races.
Certainly will. These drivers not only having to deal with the track conditions, but how about the weather conditions here today as well. Ambient temperature, it's only 78 degrees, but we're here in southern Florida. Track temp in the triple digits, 125 degrees, so slipping and sliding around this racetrack, which makes me wonder, would this be maybe one of the few races on the season where tires are going to be talked about a lot more than they normally would be?
Well, if we had somebody to ask, I think we definitely want to ask Stone Body. He just got really free trying to make a move to the outside of Bill Edwards back there in turn number 3 and tank slapped that outside safety barrier and absolutely destroyed the right side of his number 6 Monster Energy Toyota Camry. So, unfortunately for him, he lost all of those guys in front of him and he's trying to stay with them. But being the last car in the tail of this draft here with that damage is probably tough to stay with them. But pretty heavy contact right there for the number 6 machine in turn number 3.
Ryan Potter continuing to try and move that inside line forward. He's gotten himself alongside of Robert Kenny for 3rd. Just does not be able to get himself alongside the 97 or the 61. That top line still appears to be the preferred line as they're about to catch a machine. That's Sean Billman in the 06. Remember we mentioned that he started the race from pit road, so he had no drafting help from the start of this race. He's going to fall a lap down, certainly hoping for a caution to come out to save him, get him the lucky dog, and back on the lead lap.
And this is the racetrack too, where most of the time when you're getting lapped around a super speedway, you kind of just tuck up high against the outside safety barrier and you kind of give room to all the leaders. But around here, that makes things even more treacherous. It almost feels like when you're both being the car lapped and the car is lapping, that slower machine, just because of the bumps up there in the 3rd groove. I know I keep mentioning it, but when you're getting lapped around there and you're trying to get as much space as possible, it is super easy to kind of just end up accidentally catching that outside safety barrier, and then it causes an incident. So. And obviously the cars underneath are kind of pinched down because of that, trying to stay in that bottom lane. So it makes things really treacherous. And sometimes, like he did right there, just kind of staying down low and out of the way, actually, especially for these guys all around the high side. Around this old configuration of Daytona, that's usually kind of the etiquette, actually, that's expected around here. So definitely good job by him and all the guys around him to get around cleanly.
Well, it definitely broke the inside line, though. Just about everybody jumped up to the top. Ryan Potter now back to the bottom with Bill Edwards trying to get something formulated down on that yellow line once again, but not nearly the numbers that he had behind him a couple of laps ago, as still single file top 3, Stafford, Tellier, and Kenny. You got Michael Norman with them, but here comes Potter. Big push there from Bill Edwards, and you can see it there with that angle. That 50 car is beautiful. I thought this whole time that it was just a plain gray machine. That thing is entirely chrome. I mean, I was actually on board with some of these drivers when they were passing by him. You could see the reflections in there. It's like driving by a mirror.
Yeah, pretty much. And maybe that kind of helps, helps his competition throw themselves off a little bit when they're tucked up underneath the rear bumper of that number 50 Camaro. But yeah, definitely a pretty cool looking chrome race car. And obviously, if you do it right, especially in that case of that 50 machine, it really does look really good.
Dylan Body's up to speed despite the right side damage he sustained getting into the wall off the tri-oval. He's just behind the 50 of Bill Edwards, still in this lead pack. We've got 12 drivers up in this lead pack right now. The other thing that we should point out also is that last week we were at the current version of Daytona and we had 3 cautions, 2 of which took place at the very front of the field in the first 20 laps. We are about 20 laps into this race. Not to say we're without incident, but we haven't seen the yellow flag fly just yet. Does that mean these drivers realized that the type of racetrack they were coming into, they had to mind their P's and Q's just a little bit more to avoid tearing the race cars up?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Seth. I was about to mention that too. I remember talking last week in the post-race teardown, just trying to figure out what we're going to see here and expect the start of this race. And I believe I had mentioned, these guys kind of all understand the situation of this racetrack. And like I said earlier, right after the race went green, it's the only super speedway really where you have to race the racetrack. And in most situations, you usually perceive that as there's gonna be a bunch of cautions because people are gonna be in a lot tougher of a position. But when they all kind of understand that and they all have that experience that these guys do by running this every single season in this series, it actually kind of creates the opposite effect because they respect each other, they respect the racetrack, and it kind of creates this pretty clean race. And so usually that's when it obviously creates the end where it gets really exciting because you have all the cars left and these guys really lose that a little bit of that, obviously that respect trying to go for the race win. But, it kind of usually tends to start the race out pretty green. And the biggest thing too is we're already in lap 20. These guys are going to have to pit here to say probably in a handful of laps to come down for fuel and tires. And, that's also going to be, like you mentioned earlier, the 4 tire strategy is definitely going to come into play as far as who wants to take 2 and who wants to take 4.
Certainly make things interesting. Also be kind of interesting to see about some of the guys that we know up here are already sporting damage. Robert Kenny in the 10 and Dylan Body in the 6? Would they spend a little bit of extra time trying to get that car repaired? Would they even think about taking their one fast repair on this green flag pit stop? That would be a very interesting strategy with probably about half the race remaining, as now it looks like Ryan Potter's jumped to the outside line there, and David Durand, I was going to note that we've seen about 3 or 4 times he has jumped down there to the inside line, sometimes with friends. The most latest time that he jumped down there, he was all by his lonesome. Is he trying to get an inside line going, or is he maybe trying to test what kind of runs he can get, how many positions he can move up all by his lonesome, maybe kind of put something in the bank as far as remembering for later on in this race, trying to make a move potentially for a second win in a row?
Yeah, definitely can help for sure. And those two brothers down there, Justin and David Durand down in the 29 and 24, they're also helping each other out big time. Just kind of continue to run that inside lane and testing that out, and seeing how many positions they can gain just by kind of doing it mostly by themselves right now, no help around them. So, and on top of that, you also get obviously the preferred groove here for what I'm assuming will be just a handful of laps before we come down pit road. So these guys just doing a really good job of kind of trying to run that inside lane with only 2 cars and keeping up. Currently battling with third car. I know that 10 machine is pretty tore up, but currently battling with third place, the outside lane, the amount of numbers of cars they have up there is pretty impressive.
Saw that Sean Billman lost a lap. I think he's dealing with some connection issues as well. The bad news is, not only has he fallen a lap down, he might fall out of the free pass position. As you see on board with Bronson Stafford, look at the run he is getting on the 2 cars ahead of him. That is Joey Chapman and Matthew Rodriguez, 13th, 14th. Last cars on the lead lap. They're going to get swallowed up before we even get back to the start-finish line.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Bronson Stafford, Joey Chapman driving back there with the 57 machine, kind of just delaying the inevitable, I guess, if you will. And unfortunately, they didn't get a caution. Matthew Rodriguez absolutely destroys the wall at entry to the trial right there. Gets even more damage to that Toyota Camry, and now gets probably shaken back out of this lead draft altogether. So that's really unfortunate here. He's got to really now hope for a caution, especially.
Yeah, Matthew Rodriguez, multi-time winner here in the Baadteshop Superspeedway Series. Statistic that he probably would not like voiced here, but out of all the drivers that have made all 3 starts this season, he is the lowest of those drivers in points coming into this race. 17th in the point standings, only 1 top 10 in the first 3 races, and at least at this current point in time, doesn't look like he's going to get a lot of points here this evening, as well as, we always talk about the unorthodox point system that they have here. It rewards drivers that finish up inside of the top 10. You finish outside the top 10, you get very meager points for the week.
See Ryan Potter down there on the inside of the lane, just big time caught that apron like I was talking about earlier. It's pretty easy to do with that yellow line kind of just being straddling all over the place. And once the leader of the inside lane hits, everybody kind of behind him without that sight line of that yellow line. It's very easy to follow him onto it. And the entire inside lane pretty much there just caught that apron, which right now is a too big of a deal, but if it comes down into the race and these guys are racing a little harder, a little bit tighter on each other's doors, it might really come into play.
Yeah, the Monster Brigade we saw helped Ryan Potter to his victory last week. Ty Smith and DJ Stagner were amongst a couple of the teammates that helped get him to victory lane. Now he's got Sebastian Miller and Dylan Body there with him. The 2 drivers I mentioned, Smith and Stagner, neither one of them in the field here this week, as Joey Chapman, I think, might have barely brushed the wall off of turn 4, stacked him up from about 7th place on back. Right now, though, clean sailing still for the top 3 or 4. They have remained single file on that outside line for the last 15 laps or so. But to your point, pit stops are potentially coming up. We've already talked about how difficult it is to get onto pit road at iRacing Superspeedway, Talladega, Daytona, but what about a slick racetrack here like the legacy version of Daytona International?
Yeah, more importantly, in addition with that, look at this lap counter here. 56 laps, set up for this event here at Daytona. We're on lap 25, and these guys don't really seem to have any sign of pitting this time by. So I'm intrigued to see if they can make it to lap 20. Obviously, they're restricted fuel in this series. It's going to make things a little interesting as far as the fuel numbers. But if they can make it to about lap 28, and it comes down to it, the greenfield pit stops and the cycle going through, this has the potential to potentially be a little bit of a fuel mileage race. So I'm definitely intrigued to see these guys continue to run that high side, which obviously burns a little more fuel by going a further distance around the racetrack. And if obviously they can make it past lap 28, then definitely seem to be in the clear. But lap 26 right now, and again, no super big signs that anybody coming down pit road this time. If they can make it another 2 laps, it might come down to just a little bit of fuel mileage race here at the end.
Now, I would assume that Bronson Stafford would kind of be the control car for teammates that would come down with him as to what lap they would pit, especially with the fact that he's been the control car. He's been the one out in front, so he's been using up the most fuel, offering the draft to Tellier, Kenny, and others behind him.
Yeah, and that's obviously going to put him at a huge disadvantage too, because obviously he can convince his teammates to come down with him. So in his position, it doesn't hurt him too much. But if you're up there leading the outside lane, especially, you're obviously burning way more fuel than any of those cars behind you or the cars you've been running the inside lane. So obviously, if they have the pit a little bit early for Bronson Stafford, are going to put them all in a tough position, or they have to just kind of let Bronson Stafford pit and then hope that he catches back up and gets in line behind them, and they can kind of swap back and forth. But these guys from up the inside lane definitely make me believe that maybe some of these guys believe they're going to pit here soon. That 60 machine down there, Joey Chapman is obviously a lap machine after he dropped back to the 57 machine. But Bill Edwards trying to push up there, obviously is going to try to just help him get up there and get his lap back the hard way, but also obviously gain some positions for himself.
Yeah, right now Chapman would be in the free pass position should we get a caution and he not be involved in the incident that brings out the yellow. To that point as well, talking about potential green flag pit stops, as I think we might be having them, because you just noticed the top three all dive down to the inside line there off of 1 and 2, so we may be having some hands out the window here momentarily, but there's the orchestration, trying to get yourself organized, getting onto pit road. You have to make sure that you don't speed onto pit road. We've seen in these Superspeedway races, pit road plays just as much of a factor usually into the outcome of the race as what takes place on the racetrack itself.
And as the entire field gets single file out down here on the inside lane, as soon as these guys are going to start peeling off, not this time, so that actually works out so far for the fuel numbers as the complete halfway by crossing the start-finish line this time by. But another thing to keep in mind, too, at the old Daytona down here, that commitment cone, or the pit entry cone, I should say, there's actually an inside cone, which is pretty far up off that inside wall. And I've had races here before. It hasn't really particularly hurt me personally, but other people I've seen clip that inside cone and actually will receive a penalty as if you hit the outside cone. New Daytona, there's no inside cone really that you can hit, but that cone is actually pretty far up the off the bottom there of the inside wall. So if somebody comes down and a little bit too low and clips that cone, it definitely could be a penalty for them.
Riding on board here with Bronson Stafford. Again, down that inside line. Watch as he hits those bumps. Wow, that big one right there. Through 3 and 4, and here we go. Peeling off down below the yellow line. That the whole field? Everybody's coming to pit road. It's feeding time at the zoo.
And Mike Tellier just clipped that pit entry cone, so I'm intrigued to see if he ends up getting a penalty as the cone gets just shot down by somebody right there in the middle of pit road. But the entire field, every single car decided to elect to come down here right after halfway.
So everybody, it looks like, at least for the moment, has made it safely onto pit lane. Now it's the question of, do you go with fuel only? Do you take on tires? For some of those drivers that receive damage, do you take on the faster pair here and now halfway through this race? Looks like Mike Tellier down and away in the 97. Bronson Stafford's going to win the battle off pit road. Kenny might pick up a spot there as he'll come out second. He came down pit road third.
And you mentioned that slick pit road of these old war tires out here on this old slick racetrack. A lot of these guys actually locked up and slid past their pit stall. I saw a lot of cars. Mike Tellier was one of them. The 99 machine, of last week's winner, Ryan Potter. A lot of guys actually slid way through their pit stalls. In addition, Bill Edwards he checked up kind of getting early into his pit stall, and he got run over by the number 24 machine, David Duran, and also obviously caused him to overshoot his pit stall. So a lot of damage to both the nose of the 24 machine and the rear bumper of the 50 machine, and it cost them both time, obviously, down pit road by overshooting their pit stalls. So a lot of issues, actually, as you can tell, the result of how spread this field is now up here.
Yeah, it really has split the field up for sure. The top two breaking away about a second and a half back to Mike Tellier with 3 others. That's another 2 seconds back to Justin Duran, Ryan Potter. Then you got to go 9-10 seconds behind the race leader till you get to Valvano, Edwards, and Dylan Body. Looks like we did have one driver that got hit with a speeding penalty, John Cananzaro in the 58. He has now left pit road, but he is about maybe 5 seconds away from actually getting lapped from the race leaders.
And that's the biggest thing, too. All these guys were able to make it past halfway when everybody elected to come down all together. That definitely kind of throws out that ability to obviously make it further in fuel and be secured. But with how spread this field is now, obviously that reduces the amount of, of draft they're getting, especially in the case of Bronson Stafford, who led an entire first run and now is leading him and Robert Kenny with just 2 cars out there. Obviously, they're going way slower and having to work a lot harder in order to keep their speed up by just kind of having a 2-car tandem here. So while all of these guys are able to make it 28 laps to start this, the first half of that fuel run, being out that, without that advantage of having those extra cars in that pack with you, might kind of just make them a little bit more reliant on their power and the fuel, obviously.
So obviously with the field spread out as it is, it's going to be interesting to see if group number 2 can catch up to the top duo. I believe they're going to. They have been running about 0.4 of a second faster than Stafford and Kenny. I'm not certain about this group of 4 back here with Justin Durant, Ryan Potter, as well as I believe that is the lap machines of Joey Chapman and Sean Billman. They are currently roughly a little more than 6 seconds behind race leader Bronson Stafford. But you mentioned the fact that we made it past the halfway point, so these drivers should be able to make it on fuel. You see that group of 4 starting to catch up, so we'll have a group of 6 in a few moments. Do we see the aggressiveness now kick up into the second half of this race, or do we ride still for a little bit more until we get to maybe 15 to go or even 10 laps remaining?
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see when the second pack catches these two, because knowing, Bronson Stafford and Robert Kenny being teammates and just how good they proved they were last season and the start of this season, I feel like these guys are definitely going to try to maybe get a run around these guys and see if they can at least try to control the race lead to keep them from being in control. But other than that, I feel like, these guys understand there's only 6 of them. There's still 5 laps to go here in the cross the start finish line, or actually, excuse me, 23 laps to go. It kind of plays into their favor to where they just kind of keep this, separation. Obviously, those cars being shaken from the draft, they're a huge factor for them. And as you can see, Mike Taylor just kind of tucks a line behind. Of course, he's a teammate with them too, I suppose. So that actually makes a lot of sense. But just they're going to try to stay together here, run that outside lane single file, and just try to make sure they maintain that gap over the second pack, which I believe they will, and just maybe see if they can play it out 6 cars amongst themselves for the race win here.
And I have to wonder as well, we also have the lap machine of John Cannizzaro in this mix, so 7 cars in this lead pack, with having fewer cars now than we had back at the beginning before the field got split up. I think we had upwards of, 12, 13 drivers up in the lead pack. Is that going to make it more difficult for drivers, say, like Durand, Norman back there in 4th and 5th to generate a run to try and make a move if things don't change between now and the end of the race?
Yeah, most definitely, because obviously you have less cars out behind you to help you carry that momentum on the inside lane forward, and that's what's definitely necessary when you have 3 teammates up there on the outside lane all together, because they're going to wait for the last possible second to pull out to where they don't obviously hurt each other. So it's definitely going to be a huge factor here in the closing stages. And honestly, at this point in time, they're either hoping that for some reason those teammates get separated a little and they start racing each other, or they just catch a caution to get that extra help behind them. So that's definitely a really good point, and I'm intrigued to see. Obviously, with David Duran kind of being split up between him and his brother, who are working really well together, who has the ability to go down the inside lane and work well.
Closing in on 20 laps remaining in this race. 11 drivers on the lead lap. John Cannizzaro, that 58 car, right now in the free pass position, as all 15 drivers who took the green to start this race are still running. There you see Matthew Rodriguez. He will be the first car now 2 laps down, as he will let the leaders on by. All these drivers realizing, even if they are a lap down or off the pace, that if a caution comes out, there is still a chance that they could pick up spots. Those spots translate to points, and they need those points, especially with, as you said, about double the season in terms of the scheduled races this year as opposed to last year. So a lot more opportunity to be able to mount comebacks if you have 1 or 2 bad weeks in a row.
Yeah, most definitely. You just think about the amount of bonus points you can earn from, just from a single race. If you get, if you just lead the most laps, let's say, or earn 10 bonus points at minimum each and every single race, that's obviously over 140 points. So that definitely plays a huge factor, obviously, in the championship standings. So Bronson Stafford out here just continuing to lead lap after lap after lap. I'm assuming he probably has all but locked up most laps led here, being a lap 37 of 56. But I mean, it's just those add up, and once you see these guys start to have separation in the points standings, you're going to see guys race a little bit harder every lap just for those bonus points, just for the laps led, just for the pole position, just kind of make sure they don't let somebody get too far out in front, because the bonus points are always that factor where if you can focus a little bit more on that, like Bronson Stafford's doing. That wins you championships, because it's kind of just under the radar points that you're getting, where even if you aren't finishing up there, which he usually does, other guys aren't really that focused on it. They just kind of let you, basically have it all, be it, if you will. And so, that's obviously a huge factor. Like I said, you earn over 100 points just by doing exactly what Bronson Stafford's doing up here. So eventually, I'm sure these guys will start to kind of notice that separation in points and start racing a little bit harder every single lap and try and get around them. But, Bronson Stafford, he's loving it right now.
Yeah, to kind of build off your point there of just how important it is to get those points, the point standings are still awfully close. It may not seem like it. Our top 15 in the point standings, 124 point separation, but if you consider the fact that I believe with season 1, Mike Tellier was, I want to say 79 points out of the points lead heading into the season finale, and he was still mathematically eligible. It was a long shot, but he was still mathematically eligible to win the championship. I mean, you go back to last week, David Durant was 18th in points going into that Daytona race. He got himself a solid finish, jumped up 7 spots in the standings, 11th in the points, and only 103 points out. And right now, looking for back-to-back good finishes here at Daytona as he runs in that 4th position. So, yeah, for all these drivers that are running up here towards the front, they reap in a lot of points, and to your point as well, a lot of bonus points can be gained. Even if you have a bad day, those bonus points could actually maybe kind of, well, I don't know if I can exactly do the math. Let's say, for instance, Bronson Stafford gets the bonus points for most laps led here today, as well as the pole position, finishes outside the top 10. Even with those bonus points, it could equal out to maybe finishing 8th or 9th.
Yeah, most definitely, because we mentioned it last week. If you finish any worse than 10th, you're only earning 5 points for each position. All the way through each position only earns 5 points. And so obviously with only 15 cars out here, there's not that many guys who are missing out on those points. But, if you finish 11th, it's basically the same thing as finishing 15th. But if you can earn some of those bonus points to your point, that's a bonus. Obviously, that helps recover some of those lost points to those guys who finish up a little bit higher in front of you. So that could definitely come into play. Obviously, it's kind of a big gap right now between these guys after that green flag pit stop, and there's only 11 cars in the lead laps. It's kind of tough to fall out of that top 11, but it's pretty easy for any of these guys if they get in an incident, and especially Robert Kennedy just burned through his fast repair. If he can get up here and lead some laps and get some of those bonus points that he's kind of not really chasing right now, being tucked up beneath his teammate, that at least can kind of recover a little bit of your race in the points lost, obviously. So, definitely can play a huge factor each and every single week through the season.
We're looking back at our points leader, Ryan Potter, last week's winner, right now in the 7th position, leading that second group. There's only 2 drivers on the lead lap in this group of 4. The 60 and the 06 are currently 1 lap down, and actually, I believe they are trying to get up there to John Cannizzaro to battle for the free pass position. You've also got another group of 3 further back of Albano, Edwards, and Body. They seem to be starting to reel in this group, so they could make up a group of 7. The problem is, though, if we remain green from here to the finish, I don't think they've got enough time. Even if they bring on that group of 3 with about 15 laps to go, 14 laps to go, they're running 11.5 seconds behind the race leader. They just don't have the numbers, they don't have the momentum, and I don't think they have the time. They need a caution if they are going to have any shot of being in the conversation for this checkered flag.
Most definitely, and yeah, to your point, they just don't have enough cars to keep momentum up, and they're actually losing time every single lap to these leaders up here. So gap's 10.5 seconds and just continuing to grow. So with only 16 or 15 laps to go now, as across the start finish line, they definitely need to keep it up. And actually, to that point, we hear him over the radio chat right now trying to communicate, just try to stay together. And it is going to be interesting to see if that third pack actually can catch that second pack. They're trying to get a little bit of a run, and they're catching up already, kind of in the wake of that draft. So. Justin Durant, on that tail end of that draft, getting available by Vince Valvano. This little 3-car pack of Vince Valvano, Bill Edwards, and Dylan Body, they're catching a huge run. And now that by straightaway, they're already basically there.
And this actually would be an important battle between these drivers because it'd be for some of the final spots inside of the top 10. To your point, you want to finish up inside of the top 10, get those points as much as you can, not have to settle for 5 points with finishing outside of the top 10 as Vincent Valvano with help from Bill Edwards, and that almost, it is the caution. That's going to have to be the caution as Ryan Potter has completely spun it around. Body's through the grass, Chapman's through the grass, no yellow yet.
Yeah, race control there it is. Caution comes out as Joey Chapman's on the middle of the racetrack right there, but that's exactly what all those guys needed to see. Obviously not hitting each other and causing the wreck, but the caution flag for the rest of those folks definitely very much needed to see.
And I didn't say it, but I thought it, so I think I jinxed it. I was going to bring up the fact that we have never had a caution-free race here in 3 seasons of the Baadteshop Superspeedway series, but of course I thought it, so the commentator jinx happens, and the first caution of the day happens on lap 43 at Daytona. They almost had that save, too. I thought for a brief moment that we actually weren't going to see that caution, but 99 of Ryan Potter snapping back to the right and nothing he could do.
Yeah, Dylan Body did a heck of a job to your point, trying to hang on to that. It actually kept it out of getting too much major contact with the outside retaining wall right there, just kind of snagging the right recorder panel and brushing him against the wall. But unfortunately, trying to correct it, had a lot of wheel to the left into it, and unfortunately came back down the racetrack and clipped the 60 machine down there of Joey Chapman, which also obviously hurts Joey Chapman because he was in the free pass position right there, and obviously being collected in that incident. Unfortunately for him, that actually removes that free pass candidate for him. So unfortunately for him, he's still trapped for lap down and as a tore up race car. So kind of a double whammy right there, but almost a save right there by the number 6 machine.
And you saw that was just after that group of three, Bill Edwards, Joey Chapman, or correction, that was Vincent Valvano and Dylan Body getting around the second group. We're going to try and get another camera angle here because I'm not certain if the 99 tried to come down, get a little bit of side draft to stall out that last car and maybe keep in touch with them, or if he just got loose off the corner. Oh, it's hard to tell. It certainly looks like maybe a little bit of gap whack came into play as well. There might have been a little bit of space between the left front of the 99 and the right rear of the 6.
Yeah, definitely. To me, it definitely seems like it kind of got just a little free. We're talking about that bump right there over that tunnel on a turn 4. It's usually a lot more severe down the inside lane, but if you're on the outside lane, especially being wore out tires like he was up there, hopefully maybe just got touch free, kind of chased down the racetrack, and to your point, a little bit of neck code right there between the contact on his left front fender and the recorder panel of Dylan Body that kind of just turned the 6 machine up across the racetrack. So obviously just a big racing incident right there. A little bit of neck code, unfortunately, coming into play.
That contact that sent the 99 up towards the outside wall was from the 29 of Justin Durand. The 6 of Dylan Body crawled through the infield grass to pit lane, which is not separated by a pit wall, pulled to his pit stall, and then they pushed him back behind the wall. So a tough break there, an early end to the evening for Dylan Body, who was coming into this race running really well in the point standings as well. 6th in the point standings and a tie with DJ Stagner and only 67 points out. So it's going to be a big hit in the point standings for that driver here this evening. He'll look to rebound next week when we head to Talladega for the second time this season.
Well, the man on the other side of the unfortunate luck of Joey Chapman was John Carazar on the number 58 machine. He gets the free pass, so out of those 4 cars were trapped a lap down. Obviously, he gets the little benefit there and the lucky dog wave around. So he moves back on the tail end of the lap in the 11th position, and I'm intrigued to see, obviously, if he can try to drive through this field in only about 10 laps, I'm assuming, maybe just a touch more when we go back green here, how much he has the ability to kind of drive back through the field here in that short amount of time.
And I'm going to amend the statement on Dylan Body. It might have been the pit road glitch that we've talked about week after week, because I just noticed that he actually, when he pulled into his pit stall, had taken on his faster pair. So it might have been a case of having to disconnect and reconnect for the glitch to not take effect. A couple of other drivers that took on their faster pairs when they came down pit road, in addition to Robert Kenny when he did his pit stop under green flag conditions. Joey Chapman and Ryan Potter have used their faster pairs, so majority of the field still going to have their faster pair intact when we get the restart with less than 10 laps to go. Bill Edwards was the only driver electing to stay out. He'll have 16-lap-old tires underneath him. David Durand went with fuel only. He will line up in second. Michael Norman appeared to have taken on right-side tires. He will restart in third. And then just about everybody else behind took on 4 tires.
Yeah, and that strategy, like you mentioned, is coming into play with this different, ability to take different tires. And the war on surface here at Daytona, it definitely he can be willing to, give those the attack position for the 4 tires and kind of have the ability to make the moves around the racetrack and just keep your car under control, obviously. So definitely intrigued to see how those guys kind of factor out. Not too big of an issue as long as you take right side tires, obviously, like those guys did, but might come into play here in the closing stages.
So these drivers were able to utilize the choose cone rule. Bill Edwards will have Michael Norman as his drafting partner. Top side will be David Durand with Sebastian Miller. So a Ford will push a Chevy and a Toyota will push a Chevy on the front row. Then Bronson Stafford takes the inside line of row 3. He'll be alongside of Justin Duran. The rest of the drivers behind them are going to be lining up on the inside line, all choosing the inside line. Surprising nobody else electing to take the top. They would have restarted in the 8th position. But Bill Edwards gets ready to put us back under the green flag. 10 laps to go here in regulation.
Michael Norman finished second there last week at the updated version of Daytona under the lights, and he's looking to try to get one position better. Obviously, here today, currently in the 6th position, pushing Bill Edwards into turn number 1, already kind of gapping the rest of the field, but immediately Bronson Stafford up there behind him, trying to look to get that top spot recovered back from those guys.
And I'm not really certain where it happened, but you can definitely see there is some rear damage on the bumper of the 50 of Bill Edwards. Is that just visual, or does that actually affect your ability to push that car ahead of you? As up the middle, Mike Tellier 3 wide.
Yeah, that damage is exactly what I was talking about actually earlier from the car who just hit him down the back tree, the 24 machine of David Durant.
Tellier!
Oh!
Ryan Potter gonna hook the 97. Big wreck as I believe Bill Edwards is up and onto wheels. Cars litter turn 4. Caution will fly. Second time today.
And unfortunately, that's a lot more damage than ever for the machine right there.
And that's Ryan Potter's day done, I would think, because he had already just taken on his faster pair under the last caution.
Yeah, immediately he's already turned it back to the pit road for the 99 machine. Engine already done on that Toyota Camry, so he's unfortunately already parked it on pit road. Going to see if he can get any repairs done once he's done towing. But 50 machine Bill Edwards out here is crab walking through the center of 1 and 2. That car, after climbing that safety barrier, is heavily damaged. And we're talking about those runs that back straight. David Durang had a huge push to Bill Edwards right there. And Mike Taylor, we were talking about it earlier. He already tried it 2 or 3 times, made them move up the middle, worked out, got himself the race lead, and then everything kind of just went south.
And for people that would be wondering why is Bill Edwards trying to crab walk that car back to pit road, it's less time if you get back to pit lane and get service under your own volition than to call for a tow truck, spend less time on pit road, and have a chance of still being with the race leaders when the restart comes up. Looks like David Durand also got a piece of this. We know Mike Tellier was involved. We're going to get the full look of everybody that got bits and pieces of this wreck as we look back at the replay. And Mike Tellier with that move up the middle 3 wide. Looked like Ryan Potter just got a heck of a run there with him, and I don't know if the 97 lost momentum or if he checked up. Ryan Potter just wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, and unfortunately just trying to carry that as much as possible and just clip the left for a quarter panel. And at the same time, actually, I see Michael Norman down there on the inside lane kind of clipping that bump and clipping that apron like I was talking about earlier in the center of 3 and 4. Not sure if maybe that just kind of distracted the 99 machine and he didn't quite see the momentum he was closing in on the 97, and maybe that played a bit of a factor into it. But that was going to be a pretty big little shuffle down the inside lane just for that 21 machine catching the apron.
This is on board with Ryan Potter. There you see the contact. Boy, Michael Norman very lucky that he didn't get hooked around, as I believe Tellier's left front was into his passenger side door. And Michael Norman, able to keep that thing pointed straight, is going to be the race leader when we go back green. That has ended the evening for Ryan Potter. So he will not be the points leader heading to Talladega next week. Looks like Dylan Body officially is out of the race as well. He has not returned to the server since he disconnected. And so now we're going to have 13 drivers left to finish this out. And a big break for, I believe it was Sean Billman, who started this race from pit road. He got the lucky dog under this caution. We'll have 10 drivers on the lead lap when we get ready to go back green.
And Joey Chapman just 1 position short yet again on that lucky dog. So unfortunately for him, pun intended, he's not quite so lucky here today on trying to get that free pass position, get his lap back that he actually, was kind of, he gave up as a bit of a courtesy to Matthew Rodriguez trying to help him out there. And obviously, unfortunately, he's had to bite the bullet on that because of it and is still trying to recover from it. But as long as he doesn't get collected in a wreck, it's just basically him as the only guy out there racing for Lucky Dog now. So if he can catch another quick caution here before the race closes out, obviously, he can get the lap back and get himself back in contention here.
Bill Edwards did make it back to pit road under his own power, took on his faster pair right now, running in the 5th position. We'll see with the choose rule where he is going to restart. Looks like he'll be restarting in 6th place. He chooses the outside of row 3. Michael Norman takes the bottom, Bronson Stafford to the top. Then it will be Vincent Valvano on the inside line with Robert Kenny on the outside line in row number 2. So you've got the Toyota teammates up on the top side now, and you've got 2 of the 3 Fords in the field that are going to line up on the inside line there. It's kind of seemed like there's either been a few blue ovals or one blue oval week after week. This week, Michael Norman's got some manufacturer help with Valvano and John Cannizzaro in the field.
Unfortunately for Mike Taylor, we were talking about earlier about Dylan Body having that issue with the fast repair issue. It seems like Mike Taylor just received that unfortunate luck as well. He had to disconnect from the server and reconnect. And obviously, in the closing stages here, if he can reconnect in time, just like Joey Chapman, catch a quick caution and get those laps back manually by race control to kind of help him recover from that. But it's going to take a caution here in the last 6 laps in order to have a chance.
Well, mentioned the fact that Mike Taylor was one of 2 drivers to formerly have won at the Legacy version of Daytona. The other one was Garrett Gleason back in Season 1. So with Gleason not in the field, Taylor having these issues late, it looks like we might go 3 for 3 with different drivers taking a checkered flag here at Daytona Legacy version. Michael Norman looking for his 2nd career win here in the Baadteshop Superspeedway Series. For Bronson Stafford, he would be looking for his 4th and 2nd on the season. Green flag ready to come back out. It'll be 6 laps to go here in regulation. Bear in mind, there is every possibility we could see this race go into multiple overtimes as well.
Pretty big jump there with Michael Norman on that restart. Obviously, don't like to usually have that happen to you at a plate track. Tries to jump up and block the 61 machine. I'm intrigued to see if he stays in line with him, which he does, to center of turns 1 and 2. So Bronson Stafford, at the moment at least, content to riding behind the 21 machine. Already picking his nose to the outside lane and forces the issue on the outside. Makes some contact. He's in the outside, rotating the wall.
Not enough room there. Michael Norman runs him to the wall. Stafford now going to start falling back, loses momentum. Here comes the inside line. Vincent Valvano says, "Thank you very much." With help from lap machine Joey Chapman, Valvano will go to the point.
Joey Chapman just said, if I can get the free pass, I'm just going to get up here and pass the race leader myself and do it the hard way. It's Bill Edwards, who just got caught up in that incident, immediately now to the outside, actually in the 2nd position with a 6 machine being a lap down, and he's already on the outside of Vince Valvano for the race lead.
Valvano looking for his 2nd win of his career. He won at Talladega back in Season 1. Bill Edwards, his best finish was the season-opening Daytona race in Season 2, runner-up to Ryan Hesgard, so he's looking for his 1st career win in the series.
Yeah, getting a good push, Michael Norman up there on the outside lane to the back end of Bill Edwards. And we were talking about Michael Norman last week. He did a heck of a job at the old Daytona, new Daytona, trying to get that momentum up at the end of that race. And kind of just 1 position short of the checkered flag. And he's looking to obviously be just 1 position better here, and is in the same kind of situation. Does he use anything he learned from last week, finishing 3rd and trying to recover here and get the victory?
Oh boy, things are tight though. Double wide, almost 3 wide, looking back there with Cannizzaro and Justin Duran as Valvano gets his left sides down the yellow line, gets a little loose, checks up Joey Chapman, who in turn checks up Robert Kenny on the inside line. Bill Edwards with a push from Michael Norman. He will go to the point. Now I'm going to point this out. Last week, we ended up having some hairy situation in the closing stages, but these drivers all made it around to the white flag. With so much movement here today, will we be able to finish this race under regulation for the 2nd week in a row? I'm not so certain, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like the chances are definitely not leaning towards that, that's for sure. But so far, so good. Coming around to 3 laps to go this time by when they complete this lap of the start-finish line here. Bill Edwards on the outside lane, big pull back there, huge surge to the inside lane. Is that Robert Kenny with some more damage after that contact? He's to the outside of his teammate Bronson Stafford for, on the racetrack at least, the 2nd position as he gets a shot from the 50 machine entering the travel, and now looks to the race lead on the outside of 38.
Robert Kenny, he's got the torpedo car, and that torpedo is moving to the front. Help from Bill Edwards. He's clear for the top position. Robert Kenny, who has really struggled in the last couple of weeks, finds clean air, trying to keep them all behind him. 2.5 laps down the back straightaway left to go.
And a respectful move right there out of the 60 of Joey Chapman. He just kind of called the radio. I'm jumping out of the pack, not going to mess with this battle if the race win. And unfortunately, though, for Vincent Valvano, obviously, he lost his drafting partner down the inside lane. So now he's trying to make that positions back up on the inside lane, get a push now from the Haviland Ford of the 58 right there, John Cannizzaro. As now he challenges Robert Kenny once again, and actually he'll come by and probably get his lap at the start-finish line.
Look at Bronson Stafford, 3rd car on that inside line. We saw him get squeezed up into the wall by Michael Norman a couple laps ago. He's mounting a comeback, charging back to the front, side by side with Bill Edwards. That's for 4th place on the track.
Both lanes very, really even right here. 4 cars in each lane with a couple of stragglers back there in the back with David Durand and a car right behind him, Matthew Rodriguez. And these guys continue to showcase that inside lane. Those bumps can definitely help prevail that outside lane to a huge push on the straightaways. And so far for Robert Kenny and Bill Edwards, it's paying off big time.
They're going to come around to see the white flag this time. If a wreck happens between 3 and 4, we go into overtime. If they get to the white, we race back checkers, and we are going to overtime. Norman off the nose of Justin Durand. David Durand spins as well. We will go into overtime here this evening at Daytona.
And in the last possible second, essentially, right there before we clipped the white flag. And unfortunately, for Michael Norman and David Durand, that's obviously not what they wanted to have happen right there. Just a lap before they were in regulation completion, and David Durand Justin Durand as well, the brother of David Durand, if I can speak, also collected up pretty heavily in that. Luckily for all 3 or 4 of those cars involved, I do believe they all still have a fast repair left, so they still have a decent shot here. I know it's green and checkered, but they still have a decent shot here with just 10 cars in the lap to try to make that back up.
So you would be correct in that as we look and see what happened to Michael Norman. He was 3rd car on the outside line going into 3 and 4. Almost looked like maybe he bumped the 50 of Bill Edwards just a tad late going into the corner. That checked up his momentum, and he had the 29 all over his back bumper, so a big checkup going into the 3rd corner.
Yeah, unfortunately, just kind of drifted a little bit out of the groove there, like you mentioned, probably just trying to stay off that 50 machine, and unfortunately, Justin Durand wasn't really expecting it. It was just trying to give him a little bit of a help of a push to push him back up to the 50, and unfortunately just ever so slightly tied to that for quarter panel, which immediately sent that Ford Mustang right around and into, unfortunately, Bronson Stafford, who just had that contact with the outside retaining wall after the block from Michael Norman a couple laps ago.
On board there with David Durand. You saw what happened from his perspective trying to avoid the wreck, and you talked about the kind of good Samaritan move by Joey Chapman backing out of that lead group, letting them battle it out. Well, he's going to get rewarded because he gets the free pass under this caution, which will put 11 drivers on the lead lap when we go back green.
It'll actually be 12 because Mike Taylor also really much needed that caution because he had that fast repair glitch, and because he's getting waved back around by race control, I believe. That should put him straight back on the lead lap here as the 12th car. So that definitely be a huge help, obviously, in his race, as he was about a lap away from having that, or actually half a lap away from having his race basically be over.
So a couple of drivers have actually elected to come down pit lane. A few of them not a surprise. Justin Durand, Michael Norman, David Durand all involved in that wreck. But Bronson Stafford in the 61 has come down pit lane. A rather extended stay for him as well. So I'm not certain what this is about, unless it's to get that right side damage repaired after he got put up into the wall.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. And I'm kind of surprised he's not just electing to take his fast repair on here, with it being only 2 laps to go. You really, most likely at least won't be in the position to where you can come down and fix it necessarily again. So at that point, I'd probably just suggest taking the fast repair and taking your chances. But maybe he just feels like it won't hurt his speed too much. He wants to leave that in the bank just in case we have another attempted agreement checkered here, which at this rate might very well likely happen coming down to the late stages here at Old Daytona. But definitely an interesting move there on the number 61 machine.
We saw the 97 of Mike Tellier moving on by to get another lap back, which would put him on the lead lap, but then he just let the leaders pass him going into turn 3. So it looks like maybe the 97 is going to be trapped -1 for this upcoming restart. A lot of comeback stories here today as well. And of course, the fast repair helps drivers to be able to write those comeback stories. But Robert Kenny had early damage after getting up into the wall about 5 laps in, stayed up in the lead pack, and now he's got a shot of going to victory lane after back-to-back finishes outside of the top 15. You've got Bill Edwards, who was up on 2 wheels over in turn 4 in a big wreck. He's up here in 3rd place. John Candanzaro was a lap down, got the lucky dog. He's up in 4th. Now, how about Sean Billman, who started the race from pit road, was the first car to get put a lap down to green flag conditions. Now he's up here inside of the top 10. Last time by was scored in 6th. Looks like he's going to restart on the outside of row 4 in the 8th position.
And unfortunately, it looks like Mike Taylor might actually not get that lead lap back. I believe, if I'm mistaken, maybe the rule is you actually wave back to just 1 lap down. So unfortunately, he's still trapped a lap down here right behind the rest of the field. And so it's going to take another caution for him in order to try to race for that lucky dog position, which he doesn't have any competition with. So as long as he doesn't get any contact, he'll immediately receive that. But unfortunately, Mike Taylor, that, getting turned around, obviously, the middle of the field isn't good, but when you have a faster glitch and you fall out of the session and have to rejoin, unfortunately, it'll set him back even further here. And it looks like he'll probably end up finishing in the 12th position.
So we're getting ready for our third restart of the evening. It may not be our last. These drivers have to get around to the white flag after taking the green for the race to be official. They will then race back to the checkered flag no matter what happens on that final lap. But if they do not get back to the white flag, we try it again and again and again until we finally have the white flag waving in the air. Kenny chooses the bottom, Valvano chooses the top. Both of these drivers looking for their first win on the season, both former winners here in the series. The drivers behind them, though, Bill Edwards and John Cannizzaro, they're looking for their first trips to victory lane in their careers. Here we go. Another green-white checkered for these drivers as Kenny up through the gears. Might have gotten a little too good of a restart as he gaps about a car length and a half back to Bill Edwards.
As I mentioned, just like Michael Norman got in that last restart, he kind of was a sitting duck up front. Now with Bill Edwards and Michael Norman, just as I mentioned, on the inside lane right there behind him. Intrigued to see if he makes a move to the outside, which he does. Slingshots to the outside lane, but unfortunately, it seems like Michael Norman is content on staying behind Robert Kennedy on the inside.
And we had a near moment there, 3 wide. Mike Tellier, Bronson Stafford making some contact with each other. Still 3 wide with David Durand in the middle. Contact as that's Sebastian Miller getting squirrely in the center of this field. Bronson Stafford goes around the inside. Topside, John Cannizzaro. So they tried to wreck on the back straightaway, but we still stay green.
And that was a major chain reaction from contact between the 61 and the 24. Actually moved all the way up into the 63 machine, but a heck of a save. And now up front, Robert Kennedy, the huge block off turn number 4 as they come to the white flag. He's not going to get forced 3 wide, and they crash coming to the start-finish line.
And I believe the yellow flag came out just about a few car lengths before Michael Norman hit the line. So we re-rack and we do it again.
Man, these guys are going for it.
Robert Kenny, Bill Edwards. Amongst those that were collected up in that one, Vincent Valvano got a piece. Saw a couple other drivers scattering through the grass area.
Just like we had mentioned, when the start of the race plays out pretty tame, you get all those cars kind of fighting for it without much of that aggression being let out early. It kind of comes into play at the end, obviously, when they're racing for the win. They don't really quite have as much give and take. And, man, we are definitely showcasing that right now in the last 10 laps.
This was coming to the white flag, 3 wide. Bill Edwards in the middle, going to get hooked by Vincent Valvano. Kenny gets clipped. Sean Billman involved as well. Sebastian Miller gets a piece. That's John Cannizzaro there in the 58 that was facing the wrong direction through the infield grass. And by my counts, it looks like at least 3 of the drivers involved had taken on their faster pair already. So now it's a case of either your evening is done or you just ride it out here on the final green-white checkered or couple of green-white checkers and try and kind of like a vulture pick up some spots in the closing stages, hoping that other drivers run into some issues.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Bill Edwards, he was one of those guys who used his fast pair earlier, obviously that incident. So he goes from battling through life with the race lead to ended up probably, like you mentioned, kind of just straggling do as much as he can back there. Poor track positions at the end in the late stages, but we saw Robert Kennedy just with a major blocker there off turn 4, and that was a really, really aggressive move coming to the white flag, obviously. And we saw a lot of that last week at Daytona, and Robert Kennedy was even on the other end of that kind of, and he, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's the 44 where Christopher Tate pretty early, he slid up and tried to block, and Robert Kennedy just kept kind of going higher and ended up kind of hooking him. So, definitely opposite end of that, Robert Kennedy tries to block, and he gets kind of bumped around with a 50 machine and moved up out of the groove, and then all of a sudden, it's obviously just kind of causes a chain reaction right behind him, and unfortunately, it takes all those guys out.
I believe the only driver that was involved in that wreck that had a faster pair still available to them was the 38 of Vincent Valvano. So he was able to take on his faster pair. Justin Durand, extended stay on pit road. Same for Robert Kenny. Same for David Durand. They are going to have to just try and get those things fixed up as best as they possibly can and go out there and log these final laps. We saw the 57 of Matthew Rodriguez going around the outside to get one of his 2 laps back. Mike Tellier was involved in the wreck and so therefore was ineligible for getting the free pass. So it will be a battle between the 97 and the 57, potentially for the next lucky dog, should we see another caution flag fly here this evening. And we got so close to having this race come to a conclusion. Michael Norman had to have been about, oh, I don't know, maybe 3 car lengths away from the start-finish line when that caution flag came out. Now they got to reset and do it again. Norman is going to take the top. Bronson Stafford will take the inside line. I think Michael might be the only driver electing the outside line. As soon as I say that, though, here come the Fords up to the outside line with Vincent Albano and John Cannizzaro. So Norman at least will have some drafting partners on this restart. It'll be Blue Wobbles on the top, and it will be Camrys on the bottom with Stafford, Tellier, the lap machine, as well as the 63 of Sebastian Miller. It looks like it will be Sean Billman in 7th. 8th position will be behind him on the inside line. I believe that's going to be the 60 of Joey Chapman, and then David Durand actually going to choose the outside line, so he'll actually be 8th, and Chapman will be 9th. We're still going to have 11 drivers on the lead lap when we go back green, but, I mean, just how many of these drivers now are actually going to be up to speed and in the hunt for this thing?
Yeah, and that kind of comes into play as well. These guys being tore up, who's going to be kind of restarting where? From these guys who still have some pace in their car, we're trying to get some of that damage repair, and they're trapped behind some guys who don't. It's going to kind of come into a big factor here. And Mike Tellier, for some reason, I believe, did not receive the lucky dog there. Must have been involved in that incident, actually, looking at his race car. So, big unfortunateness right there from Mike Tellier. And now, actually, if we do happen to have another caution, as they delay it by 1 lap here, if he does have another caution here, Matthew Rodriguez is actually taking his fast repair. He got the free pass right there, and he's now come back to be just 1 lap down. So if he ends up, racing Mike Tellier here for his lucky dog, we do happen to have another caution, which at this rate might very well likely happen. He might be taking a loss right there, the free pass as well.
Oh, and I think I might know why that extra lap of pacing was put on. You see the 38 of Vincent Valvano dropping to the back. We've seen this in the closing stages of race before. Here, even this season, might have hit the choose cone there when they were choosing their lanes. That is an automatic EOL at the rear of the field. So a costly mistake there for Valvano, who was going to be rolling off from the 4th position on this restart.
Yeah, we saw that happen last week, like you mentioned, and super unfortunate, super easy to do here in the late stages, and obviously it can definitely hurt your chances here in Gruen Checker. But on the opposite side of that, at least there's only about a dozen cars left, and most of them are pretty tore up. So there's a good chance and possibility that he might have a shot to come back from this.
Yeah, a little bit interesting here. I don't think we've gotten to this point yet this season. Everybody in the field has now used their fast repair, all except for one. And that's Bronson Stafford in the 61. He is the only driver that still has that mulligan available to him, and who knows, he may still yet need it as we get ready for our 2nd attempt at an overtime green-white checkered. Michael Norman will be the leader, Stafford 2nd, 3rd place Cannizzaro, Sebastian Miller 4th, and Sean Billman will be 5th when they cross the line here. We'll see if they can get back to the white flag this time. Michael Norman, was so close to having the white flag fly with him out in the race lead. How do you reset as a driver and get yourself prepared for another 2 laps?
Yeah, definitely got to just set himself up like he was trying to do those last 2 runs, and just kind of make sure you can obviously get yourself out in front, make sure you have the right people behind you, and you just kind of put yourself in the right positions at the right times. And unfortunately for him up here, as I mentioned, there's only 3 cars in the outside lane, and then of course the tail end of that is Justin Durand on 29 machine. He's got a ton of front end damage to that Exalted Chevrolet, but we'll see how it pays out here. Restart, 2 laps to go.
Michael Norman trying to catch the Toyotas off guard. He did. Clears Bronson Stafford. Moves down to the inside line. Boxing Stafford in between himself and Mike Tellier. Cannizzaro says, hey, I was going to help you, but he's going to drop back now to the 3rd position, 4th car on that inside line.
Yeah, and actually basically just made that comment over the radio chat. Just kind of just joking around right there, Michael Norman. But now in the outside lane, huge push for those 2 teammates, Bronson Stafford and Mike Tellier, as they get now help from the 58 machine of Cannizzaro. After he got hung up on the 21 machine, he goes to the helps those guys in the outside lane, and now one of the 12 energy cars, Sebastian Miller, looks up here for the race lead.
And now you've got Mike Tellier, a lap machine who could try and play defense potentially for a teammate at Bronson Stafford, but John Cannizzaro says not so fast. He's going to push Mike Tellier out ahead of the 61 to get himself to the race lead. Looks like they will make it back to the start-finish line. We are racing back to the checkers now.
Yeah, and a really, really smart play right there. Actually, Mike Telly kind of boxes in that outside lane, and it's all going to be about if the 63 machine of Sebastian Miller can get clear, which he does now through the center of 1 and 2 with Michael Norman in tow behind. So it's all of a question if those two cars can jump on the outside lane together here and make a push to that back straightaway.
Bronson Stafford, he's got Sebastian Miller behind him. Norman there as well. Norman's going to jump to the top. Chapman jumps down to the bottom, so no friends for the 21. Sebastian Miller doesn't have any of the Monster Energy cars around him. If he makes a move on Bronson Stafford, does Chapman go with him?
He's going to have to try right here off turn number 4. He's laying off the room up with the 61's got a huge run right here coming into the trial. He's going to try to duck low here. Ducks high to the outside lane and can't quite do it. Bronson Stafford's actually going to hold on to some contact behind him. Joey Chapman comes through for second position right there after making that lap back up. And Bronson Stafford just kind of increases and showcases that dominance here at Old Daytona.
Bronson Stafford going to pick up his second win of the season. He will take the points lead back heading into Talladega next week. And Bronson Stafford goes coast to coast here today at the legacy version of Daytona. He didn't stay out in front all day. He led a good portion of the race, but certainly a bit of touch and go in the closing stages. But from pole to victory for the defending champion.
And you mentioned it. Obviously, there was a touch of damage on that 61 machine on the right side of the Dodge General Camry after that contact earlier with the outside retaining wall, but only driver in the field not to use his fast spare, and look where he ended up with a finish.
Well, Bronson Stafford's become quite accustomed to burning it down here at these super speedways. He did it twice last season. He's about to do it for the second time this season, and for the first time in his Baadteshop Superspeedway Series career at the legacy version of Daytona, as you saw some congratulatory bumps there from Joey Chapman, who's going to make it a Sky Motorsports 1-2 finish. Mike Tellier was there as well. Robert Kenny, well, the torpedo struck. It took till the end of the race, but the torpedo finally struck.
Yeah, spins his teammate right there like a top right there as he's trying to celebrate on the front straightaway. But we mentioned Bronson Stafford racking those bonus points earlier, getting that pole position, getting the most laps led. Now with the race victory, he came into this race with only 8 points behind Ryan Potter, who unfortunately obviously had that incident right there into turn number 3 and finishes 14th. So Bronson Stafford, I'm assuming, is going to have an absolutely massive lead here in the points standings and a huge margin over second place. And I know it's only race 4 of the season, but that definitely might come into play already being a third of the way through the season.
Absolutely. Ryan Potter finishing this race back in 14th. The only driver inside the top 5 in the point standings to even finish up towards the front was Michael Norman, 4th in the standings, finished 4th place here this evening, and he was coming into this race 60 points behind Ryan Potter, 52 points behind Bronson Stafford. So yeah, Bronson Stafford's going to have a ton of points advantage over the rest of the competition heading into next week as we take a look at the finishing results from this evening's race. How about Sebastian Miller bringing it home there in the 3rd position? And nice to see Joey Chapman finally get a good finish. I mean, this is a guy that has struggled week after week after week ever since we took the green flag at iRacing Superspeedway. I think he'll be pretty pleased with a 2nd place finish.
Yeah, especially considering he basically struggled during the entire race too. You know, trying to help back there. I mentioned trying to be that good Samaritan, if you will, of Matthew Rodriguez and trying to keep him up there. And with the way the race played out there, being green all the way through and how separated it got after green flag pit stops, we were talking about how long he was trying to make that lap back up. And luckily, with a couple of zero checkered attempts, he was able to get that back. And just in just 2 laps right there, he was able to drive all the way from 11th position up to 2nd and almost had a shot at the victory right there.
It's going to mark Joey Chapman's first top 5 of the season. Same for Sebastian Miller, and I believe same for Sean Billman. So great job by all 3 of those drivers. Michael Norman going to bring it home in the 4th position. That is, if I recall correctly, I believe his 2nd top 5 and his 3rd top 10 on the season. John Cannizzaro slid across the start-finish line, but he's going to bring it home solidly in 6th place. That's a driver that was a lap down at one point in this race. Justin Durand finishing in 7th, and Vincent Valvano was the last car up in that lead pack coming to the checkers, bringing it home in 8th. David Durand, Robert Kenny, they were damaged goods, limped it home to top 10 finishes. But then you go down here to the drivers outside of the top 10. Matthew Rodriguez never was able to recover after the early contact in this race. Mike Tellier, the damage glitch on pit road, pretty much put him behind the 8 ball. Bill Edwards had a strong car here tonight, but ends up 2 laps down. Ryan Potter came in the points leader, was trying to make stuff happen on the inside line. He's out of the race along with his teammate Dylan Body, 14th and 15th position for those 2 drivers. Well, Lucas, what do you say we talk to some of our top 5 finishers here this evening? Well, top 3 finishers, I should say, here this evening. See what their thoughts were. Certainly looked like they had their hands full with those race cars at this legacy version of Daytona. And let's kick things off with tonight's third place running, Sebastian Miller. Hey, Sebastian, it's Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. I mean, a great performance for you here today, up inside of the top 5 pretty much the entirety of this race. Kept your nose fairly clean as well, which kind of seemed a difficult thing to do with the bumps and scrapes here at this racetrack and the moving around of the race cars. A couple of big wrecks in the closing stages as well. I mean, obviously, up here in the booth, the camera shots we had looked like you guys were really having to fight these race cars on this racetrack. Was that actually the case here today, or was it a little bit more simpler than we actually thought from a third-party perspective?
The bumps are definitely tricky, especially since we had a nice long green flag run there at the beginning of the race. Tires wore out, so it was really difficult to run the bottom. So kind of fed up into everyone running the Dale line at the top. But it was a lot of fun. Love the track with a lot of character.
Yeah, and speaking of that, kind of playing into that bump right there off turn before going over that tunnel, coming to the finish right there, obviously, unfortunately, you're kind of sandwiched between two teammates right there. And, where you kind of maybe trying to play that bump into your favor, try and get a run on that 6 wheel machine. You saw you kind of lay back off of him right there on the center of 3 and 4 to try to get yourself in position to try to chase up to him and head into the start finish line and take the victory away from him. What was kind of your strategy going through your mind right there as far as which lane you're going to take, and if the 6 machine was going to go with behind you?
I noticed that the cars behind me were starting to back up and get a run, so I knew that I was going to either be a sitting duck or I needed to do the same. It unfortunately didn't work out for us at the end, but we kept the car straight, and we're living to see another day.
We saw this race take on several different landscapes, the long green flag run, the green flag pit stop, the field getting really spread out, and then all of a sudden the caution comes out, everybody's bunched back up again. I mean, obviously, you had to know at that point that the aggressive level was going to kick up and everything. How do you prepare yourself for something like that, especially when you're in the second half of the race and you know that everybody still has their faster pair available?
You just got to be vigilant, got to be aware of your surroundings, check your mirrors, and hope that you don't get caught up in someone else's mess, really. There's a lot that you can, do to keep yourself out of harm's way, and then there's things that, you can't do anything. You're just going to be in the wrong place, wrong time. But ultimately, we did what we could with little friends out there and came away with the top 3.
Well, Sebastian, congratulations on the great performance for you here tonight. First top 5 on the season for you. Hopefully we can see you carry this momentum into the second trip to Talladega next week. But for now, we're going to turn the microphone over to you and let you do some thank yous and sponsors.
Big thank you to UpperEdge, Dylan Body, everyone who's put this series together. UpperEdge is something I've been familiar with since the Xbox 360, actually. I got to do a couple races over there years and years ago on NASCAR Inside Line, and for it to be over here on iRacing is just an incredible experience.
That's Sebastian Miller. He's your third place finisher here this evening at the legacy version of Daytona. Congratulations once again. Best of luck next week.
Thank you, guys.
All right, let's even get our runner-up finisher here this evening, Joey Chapman. Joey, it's Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
What's going on, guys? It's nice to actually be talking to you and not commentating with you.
Yeah, we're dialing you up. You're not having to walk up here to get into the booth with us, man. A second place run here this evening. Obviously, some early issues, falling a lap down, but sticking with it and bringing it home in the second position. But, man, you had a shot there at the end to maybe be able to make a move to win this thing. How difficult was it to be able to generate a run in those closing stages?
It wasn't really hard at all. The issue that happened was I decided I didn't really want to make a great qualifying effort because anywhere that I start in the field, I just tend to either get wrecked or be in the wreck, but most of the time it's getting wrecked. So I just kind of decided, well, I'm going to hang in the back and see how that plays out for me. And when they almost wrecked on lap 3 or 4, I believe it was, I got on the brakes and completely lost the pack, ended up going a lap down. And so really, I just kind of had to play smart before we got into the green, white checkers with 3 laps to go. It was either 3 or 2 laps to go. We were getting ready to come to the white. I decided that I was going to drop out of the field so that if they wrecked, and I got lucky, that I would be able to get the lucky dog because I heard on my radio, yeah, you're the only car 1 lap down. I was like, then why am I racing? So I decided to just drop back and that last restart was actually kind of tough because, being the lucky dog, you got to go to the tail end of the longest line. And I just decided to start going where the runs were. And then coming off of turn two, I had Norman out in front of me, and the high line had completely died. And I faked it like I was going to go high. I still had the me getting dumped on the last lap at iRacing Superspeedway from the lead by Norman fresh on my mind. So I faked him high and went back low, and just coming onto the front straightaway. It's kind of every man for himself, but obviously that's my teammate and a very, very, very good friend, Bronson, out in front, and it was all about just if I couldn't make a clean run on him, I'm fine with finishing second to him.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the intentionally, deciding to kind of start in the back there and not put in a good qualifying effort. I do have some good news for you, at least on this, obviously the opposite side of getting almost involved in that wreck to start. Both you and the 06 machine of Sean Billman both gained the most positions in the race, so that's at least 10 bonus points coming your way, on top of obviously the second place result here. But you mentioned that run on the back straightaway, being in that fourth place position, obviously you decided that, like you mentioned, hand the 21 machine out there, but did you feel like you really had maybe a shot at the 63 trying to race the 61, excuse me, up there for the race lead, maybe coming into the start finish line?
I knew my only shot to win was a bad side draft by the 63 wrecking the 61, and so it was just a matter of making sure that I could finish second, because I was very surprised by how long that Sebastian decided to stay behind Bronson. He tried to back up to me coming off of 4, and he just didn't have the best run coming to him. So I knew once we came off of 4 and he wasn't getting alongside of him, I knew that the best that I could do was second. But it feels tremendous to finally be able to finish one of these things. I mean, I've only been doing iRacing since June of last year, and I started racing with my guys again back in about September, late September, early October. And I got to race with a lot of these guys and got to know a lot of these guys back in the day in the original iteration of UpperEdge back on Xbox on NASCAR The Game Inside Line. And it's just been nothing but bad luck. I usually end up on the short end of the stick, and I've not been able to pull off a victory in a league yet. This is actually my best effort to this date. And it does sting a little bit to know that the win was right in front of me, but the fact that I came across the line with no damage on my car and my mental health totally intact, that's the best I could ask for.
We can obviously hear the relief in your voice there as well. We've seen, you've had a fast car week after week, capable of winning races, just wrong place, wrong time. I want to go back real quickly to something you touched on in the early stages with losing the draft, falling a lap down. We didn't even see the first caution come out in this race until lap 42. So we went even around a green flag, pit stops. How difficult is it as a driver, especially at a super speedway, to keep yourself mentally focused with the fact of, there is still a chance that a caution could come out every time a lap goes by? There is still a chance a caution could come out. This race could turn around, and I could be back in the lead lap battling for this win.
Well, that was a very bad situation for me because when we came off of pit road, we obviously had the green flag pit stops, and when we came off pit road, Ryan Potter, I'm trying not to spin myself out by going too fast on the bottom on the apron of the racetrack, and he decides to go around me, and then it was like there was 2 monster cars. I believe it was the 06 of Billman as well, and then one of the Durans, and people started hitting their brakes. Like I was trying to get to work with those guys, and I don't know if they were trying to keep the 06 in front of me because he would have been the first car a lap down at that point, but I had no clue what was going on, and then we lose the draft, so I'm already a lap down, and now I'm feeling like, oh my god, I'm gonna be fighting to stay 1 lap down. So it was really mentally tough to be in that situation, primarily because nobody was working good together. And then once we finally got that caution on lap 41, I thought hanging in the back, I'm going to miss everything. Well, when you know who won the pony, Dylan Body got dumped by Potter, and that's not me trying to be rude about it or anything. I mean, he just got wrecked, and I got hooked out of that and had to burn a fast repair because my car was was crabbing after that. And so, you know, it's just one of those things where I've been in so many situations in this league. I mean, I've had the run off turn 4 to try to win the race. I've had the lead several times on the last lap and, you know, flown 8 stories high at iRacing Superspeedway. And so I've lost these things just about any way you can. I've been wrecked just about any way you can. So it was just kind of one of those things where when it comes to a strategy like this, you kind of commit to the idea of you have to let the race come to you. And I got lucky, especially on that caution that happened right when we were coming to the start finish line. That gave us the final restart. I was able to slide through the grass and avoid everybody. So, you know, I'll take all the luck that I can get, and because I've had absolutely no luck in this league or just about any other. So second place is a good thing to build off of, and to finally see the you know, the number 60 Country Boy Brewing Toyota up at the front. It's just a relief. I also got to thank my guy Aaron Hughes of Twisted Willow Barbershop out of Berea, Kentucky. You know, he's on the back of this car. Absolutely a great guy. Gives some of the best haircuts. Thompson Cat, and just all of our partners for Sky Motorsports. And once again, you know, I've really got to thank my teammates, even though I was really in no position to be helped in this race and surely didn't help anybody. There's been a lot of frustrating stretches of just constantly getting wrecked, and any one of those guys will tell you that I have the worst luck out of anybody they've ever seen on this service. So, you know, they've given me just a lot of motivation to just keep fighting. So to finally start to see the fruits of those labors is definitely rewarding.
Well, Joey Chapman is going to bring it home second place here tonight. His best finish of his UpperEdge Racing Baadteshop Superspeedway Series career. And not only that, but also going to gain 10 spots in the point standings, up to 6th in points heading into Talladega next week. So congratulations on that. Best of luck next week. Well done here this evening.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, let's go down to Victory Lane, where Bronson Stafford is standing by. Bronson, Lucas, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
Well, man, I'll tell you what a roller coaster of a day for you. Got the pole position, led the first 40 some odd laps of this race, and then caution comes out and everything changes. You're up into the wall. You have to have an extended stay on pit lane. Had to work your way back up into the top 5, but had yourself right place, right time in the closing stage of this race and pick up win number 2 on the season. I mean, did you expect that you were going to be able to get back up there? Because it was certainly looking like things were going against you in those final 10 laps or so.
Yeah, it was tough. Obviously with bumpy Daytona like 2008, it's more 2-lane than often than 3. It's just harder to make 3 wide work with people that like it just bumps up the track naturally. So you don't really risk it or push it too much until it's the white flag. So it was just kind of like being stuck down there for a little while. But no, we were able to avoid the wreck coming to the white for the on the first overtime to go to the second one, and we were able to pretty much pick our lane second, and that was that's all we really needed at that point, was just to be able to pick a lane in the first 2 rows, and we had teammates behind us with Tellier, who unfortunately, you know, had the wheel glitch, but able to have him behind us, get the push, get to the lead, and then just kind of watch the mirror and see what happened to the white and checkered, and it worked out.
Well, first off, Bronson, once again, congratulations here on the victory at the old version of Daytona. And I hate to be boring, but you know it's only the third way through the season, so obviously it's still pretty early. We still have 8 races left to go here. But looking at the point sittings, you know, coming to this race, we're 8 points behind the 99 machine of Ryan Potter, and now you leave with a 79-point advantage here after essentially a dominating performance here at Daytona. You know, coming off this championship last season, you know, we saw last season actually the championship's curse kind of carried over, and a lot of the guys who battled for the championship the year prior kind of had struggles and were unable to, you know, continue that stretch. Obviously, for you, it's so far, at least third way through the season, it's kind of played a different factor, you know, and you know, being the first driver to actually end up with multiple wins here in the season. Just kind of talk about how, you know, your strategy kind of carries in the rest of the season, and how maybe you feel like others might race you, knowing that you're kind of that guy now to chase down.
I don't know. I'm not really gonna change anything I do. When I start changing things that I do at these types of tracks is when I usually get myself in wrecks. Honestly, it showed last week where I was too late to a block on my own teammate. I hesitated, second guessed, and took us both out, and we didn't get a yellow for it till the end of the race, and finished like 12th and 13th when we were 1-2. Just because I was being nice. Like I was too hesitant on it. So we went back to the normal routine tonight, and we know we led over half the race from pole, and we had us all up top on the high side. We never even try and block the bottom because we were so sure of what to do. I think that's the biggest thing is just don't necessarily change what you're doing, and make sure you have your teammates around you at all times and being able to work with them as well as you can.
Well, Bronson, you're certainly racking up accolades, of course, coming into this season as the defending champion. It's now your second straight multi-win season. Not only that, you've now become the first driver in Baadteshop Superspeedway Series history to have a victory at every single Superspeedway that there's been on the schedule. The only one that you were missing was here at the Legacy version of Daytona. So, I mean, how cool is that, and how do you ride that momentum into Talladega next week now?
I like Dega. We finished top 3 there last couple weeks out when we pushed Mike to the win and got him that win. We won it last season, so Dega should be fun. Also, Seth, I'm missing Monza if we ever go back. Come on. But no, it's cool. The tracks are the same but so much different. They're all plate tracks, but they all drive so differently. Daytona repave is smooth and narrow and quick. This one's bumpy, kind of limited to 2.5 lanes unless you really force it. Talladega's wider. You get a little bit more of a run. You can go places with it. And then, I mean, what do you say about iRacing besides it's 2,000 feet wide? So, no, it's cool. It's cool to come out, win on all the tracks. Definitely, I think, puts a staple that, it's not a one-track kind of thing. It's good at every plate track we're going to. We need to go back to Monza, but I don't think we can set the cars up for it to make it as good as we'd like to. But if we ever go back, we got to try and win that one.
Well, congratulations on the victory here this evening, Bronson, taking the points lead back into Talladega next week. And now we'll give you the opportunity for some victory lane. Thank you, sponsors, and shoutouts.
Oh yeah, definitely the whole Sky Motorsports team. A couple guys had a bad luck tonight. I know Matt Rod was never able to get his lucky dog back. Unfortunately, Mike had the damage glitch, but we still ran with him. He got us to the lead there on that last green white checker that we used and was able to get the win from it. Chapman was a lap down most of the race and was able to come back, finish second. So nice 1-2. Kenny was running good. I mean, we had half the race. It was me, Mike, and Kenny, top 3, just riding around. And just everything that went on there. All the sponsors on the cars, everything there. Matt Muir making all the pretty race cars for the Sky Motorsports team. And obviously UpperEdge coming back, putting all this together, and you guys broadcasting. And it's always a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun to come out here and do plate tracks and just have some fun for Sunday night after a NASCAR race and just get to hang out with some friends.
Well, that's Bronson Stafford's second win on the season for the defending champion. Takes place here tonight at the Legacy version of Daytona. Congratulations once again. Best of luck next week at Talladega as you try and go for win number 3 on the season.
Yeah, thanks, Seth.
That's going to conclude our coverage here tonight for the NSRA 140 at Daytona International Speedway. These drivers will pack up and head just a couple of states over to Talladega, Alabama. Second time that we visit that super speedway here this season. I want to quickly just go back to a question that you were asking Bronson, Lucas, about now with him not only being the defending champion, but being the first driver to park his car in victory lane not once but twice. Is he the guy that everybody's gunning for, kind of the bar that everybody's trying to beat? But the thing I'm thinking of here as well that I notice is, a lot of times those guys that finish up at the front week after week are the guys that people want to work with because they're fast cars. If you help them, you're helping yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think I may have actually kind of made that point earlier tonight when I was talking about him and the rest of his teammates kind of working together. It's, it's kind of a 50-50 because, like you mentioned, you definitely want to get yourself up towards the front at all moments in the race. And those guys, you can at least trust to get yourself, or trust to be fast enough to get you up there. And so it definitely comes into play where, selfishly you kind of want to get yourself up there. But at the same time, you understand that, at the end of the race, especially when you're kind of racing for that race win, those are the guys you have to beat. And that's where it definitely, is kind of a double-edged sword as far as just trying to set yourself up to get up there and get that track position, and at the same time, not letting those guys get connected like we keep seeing each and every single week, and kind of just helping each other get themselves into victory lanes. So a lot of these guys may have to kind of work together. We see these Monster Energy Brigade, we see these guys all, trying to work together, and it's going to come down to maybe a little bit of working against them, and unfortunately, that's kind of the part of the success, like I mentioned earlier too. When you're on that success train, it kind of can come back to haunt you just because of those guys understanding that you're the guy to beat each and every single week. So Bronson Stafford obviously definitely making the most of it right now, and obviously going to try to continue. Like he said, definitely not changing anything is usually the best strategy you can take, but it's all about the rest of the field. And when you're Superspeedway racing, that definitely comes majorly into play.
So we're going back to Talladega. All these drivers, for the most part, have already taken to the track one time this season. In the 60-lap event that we had earlier on this year, 19 laps under caution with 6 yellow flags flying during the course of that race. Do we see something different next week since these drivers now have gotten pretty used to each other's racing style in 4 races into the season?
Yeah, it's definitely tough because we just gone to different tracks. So far 4 races in, we've gone to 4 different tracks. So now, first time going back to a track will obviously help since we've already had that experience, but it's just a change, week in and week out, especially from old Daytona here. Like I mentioned, probably be the most obscure Superspeedway, or at least the most wore out surface and the most racy racetrack. So, as far as racing the racetrack. So, it's definitely going to come back into play to, where we usually just see normal, style plate racing, obviously at Talladega. And like you mentioned, these guys are also 4 races into a season. They kind of understand how to race each other better. And with the setups these guys are also making for these guys, it definitely can kind of help them understand exactly how the car will handle before they even get into the race session. So I'm definitely intrigued. And, we kind of anticipated this race being a bit of a wreck fest. And on the other half of that, it also stayed clean all the way until the end, where it kind of sort of did become a bit of an intensity fest, and we saw 3 different green and checkered attempts there, I believe, and so we actually were finally able to finish the race under green. So might kind of see that carried into next week. Maybe we kind of have a different strategy where these guys go hard like they did at the start of Daytona, and it's kind of the opposite end of it, to where we have a lot of incidents to start the race just because these guys are, racing each other so intensely. So definitely intrigued to see how that works out, but the comfortability, at least, of going back to a track for the first time this season will probably help big time.
And we hope that you folks join us when we head back to Talladega next Sunday night. The green flag scheduled to fly at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But here this evening at the legacy version of Daytona, it's Bronson Stafford taking the checkered flag in the NSRA 140, second win of the season, and he will be your points leader heading into next week. Lucas, it's been a crazy one here tonight. Long green flag run, green flag pit stops, and then some green-white checkers at the end. Appreciate you joining me up in the booth tonight.
Absolutely, Seth. My pleasure.
And again, thanks to all that tuned in this evening. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage here of the UpperEdge Racing Baadteshop Superspeedway Series. We'll see you guys again next week. Until then, for Lucas Cram, I've been Seth Cole. Enjoy your Sunday evening, folks. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed